Welcome at Polish Tech Day. Again, a pleasure to speak with such a distinguished guest from the US. And I'm really happy that you found time to join us for this call. For those who just dial in, I simply want to do a quick introduction because I'll have a pleasure to speak with Marc Goodman, who is the Global Security Advisor, futurist, and the New York Times best-selling author of the book called Future Crimes. And by the way, did you know it's not only a book written in English, but in many languages, including Polish. So if English isn't your first language, or if you'd like to share all the insights that Mark wrote there with your friends who are only speaking Polish, it's absolutely possible. And you should definitely do it for a simple reason, because Mark claims in that book, which is something we all think, that technology is powerful, but can be used for good, but also for bad, and can be hijacked and turned against us. And as I remember from that book, you mentioned there drones, the implantable medical devices in your body, and 3D printers that can print anything, including weapons. So I think this is a very interesting topic. And to be honest with you, what I will do right now, I will be quiet because I love to hear everything on that from you. So Mark, welcome at Polish Tech Day, first of all.
Thank you, Kuba. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for having me here. Thank you to the Plugin Foundation, and congratulations on another successful Polish Tech Day. It's really an amazing gathering that you've put together.
I'm really pleased to hear that. And I'll start with your story simply because I want to understand why cybersecurity. You are the leading expert in that field. But I simply want to understand what made you choose that career.
Well, I've always been interested in, I guess you would say, public safety, right? I grew up in New York in a time ago, I will say, when crime was very high. Many people were at risk. It was a dangerous place. And so I started to think back then about security and what we can do to protect ourselves. And I paid close attention in this field. But of course, I noticed early on, for me as early as the 1980s and 90s, that technology was evolving and was going to play an increasingly large role in crime and public safety.
No, absolutely. Yes, I absolutely agree with you on that. And I must say that when I was exploring this topic, I realized how little I know about it, especially as you have, let's say, various layers of cyber security, but also cybersecurity is because of cybercrime. And because we are on technology conference, and because I know that our audience is representing various companies, I simply wanted to start to analyze what is cybercrime. I know it is quite general, but if we start general, we can then narrow it down when we develop, simply because I want to understand how it has changed throughout the time. I know you mentioned that in your book, and even though it's quite a recent book, I'm pretty sure it has evolved even since then when it was published.
Absolutely. So cybercrime and the nature of cybercrime has changed quite a bit over the years. There was a movie many years ago with Matthew Broderick called War Games in the 1980s, where he played a high school student who would hack for fun. He would try to change his grades in the school computer and might have accidentally hacked into the Pentagon, but it was all done for a sense of fun and mostly as a game. And that was really the way the hackers ethos was for a very long time. It was done for the challenge. If most of the people who were doing this were coders, they had a background in technology, in coding, in computer science, or a strong interest. They were hobbyists. And so they wanted to see what was possible. They liked to push the boundaries of the system. But starting about 25 years ago and accelerating greatly over the past few years, this whole field has really become about crime, and most particularly about money. So there are many people who are making phenomenal amounts of money around the world for criminal purposes. They are both individuals, but increasingly they are very large groups of criminals, criminal syndicates. So we saw all the old movies about the mafia back in the day where, you would have these very rough Italian mafiosos who would go in and shake people up. Now all of that can be done virtually and via a computer. And the money and the amount of money is in the trillions of dollars. According to some statistics, over $2 trillion a year is lost to cybercrime and cyber attacks.
No, absolutely. I must say, even in London here, when I travel by tube, I can see plenty of ads with different products, which of course should defend you, which is quite interesting if you can see it. I mean, anywhere, literally anywhere. But
I will talk about those ads just for 1 second,
uh-huh.
given your. So we're focusing, and probably will, for much of this conversation about the downside, but what you just said is a good opportunity for people in the plug-in and Polish diaspora tech community to understand the opportunities, right? A $2 trillion problem is a $2 trillion business if you can solve that problem. So I would encourage people to explore many of the positive opportunities in the field of cybersecurity that may be there before them.
Absolutely. You mentioned governments, you mentioned companies. I would love to ask about how governments can protect themselves. But before we go there, actually, because I think that it might be simply more relevant. We don't have many government officials here, but we have plenty of company owners. I know it depends on different layers. Sorry, the different levels, because we have people who run big organizations here, but also we have startups. I just wonder if you could tell us more how tech companies can protect themselves. And don't get me wrong, I just wonder what's the usual scenario, how easy it is to actually hack a company, and what's the result, what people actually lose, because I've read many stories about companies which were very profitable, but because they were simply that they fall a victim of cyber criminals, that they had to close the business. And if you have a physical business, it's of course harder for you to actually close it. But if your business is absolutely online or only online, regardless if it's a big or small one, it's a different story.
So that's a great point, particularly for this community. There was a study done in the United States that shows that after a company, particularly a small company, so 50 to 70% of small companies, after they are hacked, after they suffer a data breach, go out of business, right? So this is a seminal event. If this happens to your company, and it's quite possible that it might, you can lose your company. So it's very much in your best interest to detect these type of events and know how to protect against them. If you are doing a startup, one thing that all startups have in common is they have intellectual property, right? That's what gives your business value. And if you are creating value, there will always be somebody there who wants to take that value that you are creating. That could be a hacker organization, that could be an international organized crime group, that can be a competitor, that can be a government. So all of these forces are coming after your company. And the more unique your intellectual property is, say in the field of robotics, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, genetics, synthetic biology, the higher the value it has, and the more likelihood you will be hacked and somebody will try to steal what you have. And you would think, well, we're just a small company. We're not that interesting. Nobody would come after us. And I think that's one of the very fundamental mistakes that almost everybody in the world makes today, both private individuals and startups. You think you're too small and they're not coming. Why would they come after me? The thing that people don't understand is they're not coming after you. They're coming after everybody, right? There are times when you are specifically targeted, but there's a phenomenal amount of automated tools where they just write scripts, bots, spiders that go out there. And these are basically automated thieves. It's as if when you were sleeping at night, an army of 10,000 people went through your town and village and tried to open every lock and every door and every window in the city. That's happening on a daily basis in the world of cyber. So if you leave any of your doors open, if you leave any of your virtual windows open, somebody will walk through them. So first and foremost, you have, as a small business, as a startup, you need to take cyber seriously. And many of the factors that drive successful startups are nightmares for cybersecurity, right? Everybody wants to become the next Silicon Valley unicorn. They want their company to grow. If you've been in a successful startup, you know being in a fast growing startup is like being on a rocket ship. Oh, we need to hire 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. And the faster you move, the more likely you are to make mistakes. And it's not just on the technical front. You need to understand who you're hiring. Who are your business partners? Who are you sharing APIs with, right?
Absolutely.
There's the human factor involved as well.
No, absolutely. I'm just thinking because I'm pretty sure I don't want any names. However, I want to hear some meaty stories. I just wonder because I'm pretty sure that big companies make mistakes, and we've heard loads of these mistakes. Actually, quite recently, even one of the key Polish game, the developer was hacked, and that there was a ransom to pay. We never know if it was paid or not. However, it only shows that if such a big companies struggle with that, we can easily assume that smaller ones as well. I just wonder if you could share some insights of what's the classic mistake they make, and if there is a difference on a level. So I imagine that bigger companies make different mistakes, smaller ones, especially as you mentioned, when you grow, when you expand very quickly, and when you hire new people, it's extremely easy for young startups to be too trusty and share all the information on, let's say, cloud, and somebody comes, steals your data. That's an easy one. However, I'm also interested in like a big criminal organization, because I'm pretty sure there must be some people who just target vulnerable companies, steal the idea, and then even though you have a clever idea, boom, you all don't exist.
Absolutely. And you're right. Different organizations have different layers of sophistication. But what's interesting is we've seen story after story about the European Union being hacked, Germany being hacked, France being hacked, the United States being hacked. I mean, so hackers are perfectly capable of taking on governments successfully, right? We've seen very significant critical infrastructures attacked. In Ukraine, we had the airport taken down. Air traffic control was stopped by a hacker, so planes couldn't land and take off. The entire city's electricity was turned off. Just in the United States, in the past few weeks, we had the Colonial Pipeline disaster where oil flow to 1/3 of the eastern part of the United States was turned off as a result of a ransomware attack. Ransomware is billions and billions and billions of dollars in business. And so I say that because you asked, what can a startup do? I guess if I were to leave one piece of very significant advice is not to underestimate your enemies, not to underestimate the power, sophistication, and capabilities of the people coming after you, even if you are just a small company that nobody's ever heard of. Because when somebody successfully collects $100 million in ransom, some of these ransomware organizations easily are doing 10, 20, $15 billion worth of business. So they went from zero to $1 billion of valuation, right? Don't think of them as criminal organizations. They're startups too, right? They're startups for bad. You're startups for good. Your community is doing good work. You're a startup for good, but there are startups for bad. They use the exact same techniques. They grow, they have personnel issues, but they have $1 billion valuation, which means that there are also cybercrime unicorns, right? There are not just regular unicorns, there are cybercrime unicorns. And when they get that level of valuation, they have research and development departments. So they are spending to build new tools, to move faster, quicker, to invest in the latest technologies. They're fully cloud-based. They use SaaS software. Everything that you do, they do sentiment analysis, artificial intelligence, deep fakes, all of these different tools. I'll just give you one example out of Germany from a utility, an energy company, just happened about a year ago now. Deep fake, I'm sure you've heard of this. This is when you can change a video or an audio file, something like that, using artificial intelligence. We knew, and I even wrote in my book many years ago, that this would happen. And it has, where we had a CEO in Germany get defrauded out of a few €100,000. What happened was he got a telephone call or the CFO of this company, large energy company, got a call, the CFO did, and it was from the CEO. And the CEO said, hey, I want you to transfer 200,000 euros to this new vendor that the CFO had never heard of. And the CFO said, well, who are they? And the CEO said, don't argue with me. If you want to keep your job, you better make that transfer. And the CEO said, okay, I'll do it. He made the transfer, 200,000 euros gone. An hour later, the CFO and the CEO are in the elevator together. And the CFO says to the CEO, don't worry, I made that transfer. And the CEO said, what transfer?
Amazing.
He had no idea what was going on. And what had happened was the CEO had given a number of public speeches. Some hacker was able to download a significant sampling of his voice, put it into a deep fake algorithm, recreate his voice, and order the CEO what to do.
Wow. No, I mean, I am aware of deepfakes. It was quite popular right now before recent elections. I mean, in every election in any country is possible. Of course, people were creating those deepfakes for fun, but I can imagine it's really easy to actually create them, to actually present somebody in a really bad light. I just wonder, I wanted to ask you a question about IoT, but before actually we go there, the deepfake question is even just in my head right now. How we can actually protect from that? Because I've seen the deepfakes and they are still quite, okay, you can kind of feel that they are deepfakes, but I'm pretty sure that in 2, 3, 5 years time, it's quite likely we'll not be able to recognize if it's a deepfake, if it's me speaking with you, or if it's, I'm trying to say, I mean, this is really, and I'm pretty sure that no one is actually prepared. I mean, there must be some kind of cyber police. However, we as the citizens, we're not used to being deceived on such a deep level.
In the United States, on the back of the money, it says, "In God we trust," right? That's what it says on the dollar bill, meaning that we as the people, when the founders of the country said, "In God we trust." Over the past 30, 40 years, we have become a country, and the world has become a place where it's in screen we trust. If it's on our screen, we believe it. The news story we see, what is on our Facebook feed, what we see on a TikTok feed, it all happened, right? It's in screen we trust is the world we're in. That's so different from the way we used to grow up. If you grew up in a small village in Poland with 25 or 100 people, you knew everybody in the village. There were no deepfakes. You knew everybody's business. You knew everybody's family story and what was going on. Now we're completely decentralized. I don't know about the man living in Lagos, about the woman living in Kigali. I don't know this stuff. So we interact with screens with people we never would have previously met. So we live in an in screen we trust world. And of course, there are governments and hackers and criminals and people you want to date that take advantage of this, right? I'm sure, a very simple example of a deep fake is you sign up for a Tinder account and you swipe right and you think you're getting one thing and you go on the date and you get something else. So that's not quite a deep fake, but there is a lot of deception online, in case maybe anybody in your audience might have had that experience. I know nothing about this, but the point is with deep fakes, it's going to come down to technology, right? We're going to have to develop technologies that will detect these counterfeits, but there is a race going on. And right now, those who are capable of digital deception are running far, far ahead. And when you do it to one person, it's one thing. But as we've seen with this innovation in fake news, you can do this on a mass scale to control people, to control populations, to control countries. And that's actually quite concerning.
Do you think that, I mean, it will be a very easy and rhetoric question, but do you think it will be used more in, let's say, political elections? Not even political elections is easy because you have one date and you have a race to that. But also I think the big corporates are obvious targets for deepfakes. And you just gave an example from Germany. I just wonder, like in 2016, we have, of course, the Cambridge Analytica situation in the US. I imagine that in the future, in any country, any group of cyber terrorists could create a video or a series of videos which will even more impact the elections. I mean, I just wonder how we can is there anything we can do apart from waiting for technology to be developed by our national or international police units, or I just.
Well,
Mhm.
when I gave my TED talk, I ended it with saying, this problem is too important for the police alone. In other words, the police can't do this by themselves. The
Yes.
government can't do it by itself. This is going to have to be a grassroots movement of the people, and particularly the folks in your audience, the people in your audience who have technological skills, who are at the cutting edge of innovation, Polish ambassadors of innovation. They have a huge role to play in protecting their families, their children, their society, their country, and building the type of world that we want to live in. We're going to have to all do this together. By the way, the issue of deepfakes is not new. I mean, this has gone on for many years. In most countries, it was called censorship, right? Where the government put out specific information. But even going back nearly 100 years, there was an American actor called Orson Welles who did a radio program. So this was even before there was television. It was called War of the Worlds. And it was a broadcast that came on the radio that talked about aliens
Yes.
invading New York. They've landed, they're here, they're little green men, run for your life, right? And people panicked, right? They ran out into the streets. They thought aliens had attacked. So whatever the technological medium of the day is, there will be people who will use it in ways that can be upsetting.
No, absolutely. I really want to ask you a question. So we started with governments and companies. I also want to ask about more, let's say, individual, personal level. And I think that the IoT, the Internet of Things, would be a really a really good starting point here. Because look, I'm wearing a watch right now, and I'm pretty sure that this smartwatch. I mean, many of our audience members are wearing anything like this. We're soon going to have glasses that can display anything. In my home, you have the smart fridge, smart anything, actually, all the possible appliances, which is good. But I'm pretty sure that as companies and governments have to adapt and take cybersecurity very seriously. I think that we
An
should.
internet connected refrigerator is good until it walks across the room and kills you in your sleep. So that's one thing to be concerned about. By the way, I'm logged into your watch now. Your pulse is 78, your temperature is fine, everything's good. So, I mean, that's really the difference today. Is in the old days, computers were big gray boxes on our desks in the office. And then eventually we had them at home, and then they became laptops, and then we got internet enabled mobile phones. And as you rightly pointed out, today we live in the age of the Internet of Things. And according to Gartner Group, we're going to add billions and billions of devices in the next few years. McKinsey, the consulting company, says that the Internet of Things economy is going to be close to $2.7 trillion. So do you think $2.7 trillion would be an interesting target for organized crime? Of course it will. And the challenge with the IoT is our threat surface area. That's a term that they use in the world of cybersecurity. Our threat surface area, the number of places where we can be attacked, the number of places that we have to defend and protect is growing exponentially. So when you just had to protect the gray box under your desk in the office was one thing. But now, as you point out, it's your car, it's your refrigerator, it's your pet, it's the airplane, it's the bridge, it's the street lights, right? It's your cardiac pacemaker, it's your diabetic pump, it's your cochlear implant. All of these have Bluetooth and NFC and Wi-Fi and all these other connections. And so the scale and scope is that ultimately we will live in a world where every single object on planet Earth, from whales in the sea to the can of Coca-Cola that you're drinking, will have an IP address and be connected to a global information grid. And it's all hackable.
I have to say, I'm absolutely terrified. I would say I wouldn't leave my home, but I actually hadn't left my home for almost over a year, because of
good practice.
Yeah, it is a good practice. I just wonder, just give me something positive. Like, I really think that we just covered all possible levels, and it seems that the future is not so bright, but I'm pretty sure maybe we should promote an idea of creating, or maybe we shouldn't, an international police who will protect us, but then again, who will guard the guardians as it goes. Do you have any positive news? Like, please tell me something, because otherwise...
Yeah, I have a ton of positive news. It turns out that 95% of data breaches can be traced back to human error. 95% of the time, somebody gets into your network, into your system, because of a human error. Either the people who coded it wrong, you made your password 123, you posted it on a yellow sticky on your computer, you clicked on a stupid link that you shouldn't have clicked on, you jailbroke your iPhone. All of these human behaviors put you at higher risk. On my website and in the book, I created something called the Update Protocol, which it's a simple 6-7 step program that can reduce your cyber risk by 90%. So you can do small little steps in updating your software, using the right passwords, having a password manager, watching what you download, encrypting your hard drive, using a VPN. These types of things can dramatically reduce your risk by 90%. I mean, it's who wouldn't want to be 90% richer or 90% skinnier or something like that? It's a phenomenal achievement. There is no such thing as 100% security, right? A bank is more secure than your car. But if somebody has the right explosives and enough men or women and enough guns, they can get into the bank too. So nothing is foolproof. It's about having good systems. Also, on the positive side of technology, I would say, let's not forget all the wonderful things that technology will bring us, right? We live in an exponential world where things that we are doing now were impossible just a few years ago. When, going back 20, 30 years, when President Clinton was president, he had, what you have in your pocket today. He had a phone that was portable, that could call anybody in the world on a moment's notice. Yeah, so do you. You have an Android or an iPhone today. So the technology is being democratized in a phenomenal way. And technology will bring the next billion people out of poverty. Synthetic biology, genetics, all of the advances in nanotechnology are going to drastically extend human life. We're going to be able to educate the masses, and we've seen, you can learn anything on YouTube. You can attend free classes at Harvard or Stanford or London School of Economics. So education can be democratized. I have to say, I'm not surprised that we had a technological glitch. It wouldn't be a session on hacking if we didn't have some sort of hacking incident. I'll just keep on talking as if you can hear, and you can feel free to edit as necessary. I was just saying that ultimately I'm very, very optimistic about technology. I think that we're going to have amazing things as a result of it. Advances, as I mentioned, in robotics, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, nanotechnology, genetics, space science, material science, 3D print, additive manufacturing. They're going to be phenomenal. And for your community there, the people that are attending Polish Tech Day, Diaspora, the Plug-in Foundation, these are phenomenal times and great opportunities for them to show their knowledge, their entrepreneurship, to show their innovation and highlight it to the world. And I think that's really exciting. And I say that anything I can do to help you and your community would be my pleasure.
Thank you very much for that.